The massive doors of Nexus Station hissed open, and Ambassador Rebecca Williams stepped through with her small group trailing behind her. The station's main hall was enormous, with crystal walls that showed the stars beyond and floating platforms where dozens of alien species had gathered. This was supposed to be the most important meeting in human history, Earth's first official invitation to join the Galactic Council as a military ally. Rebecca wore her best diplomatic uniform, dark blue with gold trim that caught the artificial sunlight streaming through the crystal dome above. She walked with confidence, her heels clicking on the polished floor as she approached the central platform where the council members waited. Behind her came what looked like the most ordinary group of humans anyone could imagine. There was Harold, a man in his 60s with gray hair and tired eyes. He wore simple work clothes, blue coveralls with his name stitched on the pocket. He pushed a wheeled cart filled with cleaning supplies and moved slowly, as if his back hurt from years of hard work. Every few steps, he would cough quietly into his hand. Next to him walked Emma, a young woman who could not have been older than 25. She had brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and wore jeans with a plain white shirt. She carried a small computer tablet and kept looking at it, typing notes with her thumbs like any office worker might do. Her sneakers squeaked slightly on the smooth floor. David shuffled along in a wrinkled gray suit that had seen better days. His tie was loose, and he carried a worn leather briefcase that looked like it might fall apart at any moment. His hair was messy and he kept pushing his glasses up his nose as they slipped down. He looked exactly like someone who spent all day behind a desk filling out paperwork. Alice brought up the rear, a quiet woman with thick glasses that made her eyes look large. She wore a simple dress and carried what appeared to be office supplies, folders, pens, and a small bag that probably contained more boring paperwork. She walked carefully as if she was worried about tripping over something. The alien delegates watched this group approach with expressions that ranged from confusion to outright insult. The Vorthans were 8 feet tall with blue skin and wore golden armor that gleamed under the lights. Their leader, Commander Thex, tilted his massive head and made a sound like grinding metal that might have been laughter. The Draconis representatives were even more impressive. These were reptile-like beings with dark green scales and red eyes that glowed in the dim light. General Krextar, their military commander, was nearly as tall as the Vorthans but twice as wide. His battle armor was black with silver spikes, and energy weapons hung from his belt. When he saw the human delegation, his scaled lips pulled back to show rows of sharp teeth. "This is Earth's military delegation?" General Krextar asked, his voice deep and rumbling like distant thunder. "We expected to meet warriors, not this." The other aliens began to whisper among themselves. The insect-like Chitauri made clicking sounds that served as their laughter. The floating ethereals, beings of pure energy contained in crystal shells, pulsed with what could only be amusement. Even the peaceful Aldorians, who looked somewhat like tall, thin humans with silver skin, seemed surprised by what they were seeing. Ambassador Williams reached the central platform and bowed slightly, a gesture of respect that all species understood. "Honored council members, I am Rebecca Williams, representing Earth in these historic negotiations. I bring greetings from our world and hope for a peaceful alliance between our peoples." Commander Thex leaned forward, his blue skin darkening with what the humans had learned was a sign of anger among his species. "Ambassador Williams, we called for this meeting to discuss military cooperation against the growing threat in the outer systems. We expected Earth to send their finest warriors, their most skilled soldiers. Instead you bring us." He gestured toward Harold, who was quietly wiping down his cleaning cart. "Maintenance workers and office staff." Rebecca maintained her diplomatic smile, though some of the aliens noticed it never quite reached her eyes. "I assure you, Commander, Earth takes these negotiations very seriously. Every member of my team is here for a specific purpose." General Krextar stood to his full height, which made him tower over the human delegation. His red eyes fixed on Harold, who was now slowly mopping a spot on the floor that did not appear to be dirty. "Perhaps Earth does not understand the nature of the threats we face. The Outer Rim worlds have been attacked by unknown forces using weapons we have never seen before. Entire military installations have been destroyed without a trace. We need allies who can fight, not whatever this is." The whispers among the alien delegates grew louder. Some species began to look angry, as if the humans were making fun of them by bringing such an ordinary group to such an important meeting. Others seemed sad, thinking that Earth was simply too weak to be of any real help in the coming conflicts. Emma looked up from her tablet for the first time since entering the hall. "If I may," she said in a quiet voice that somehow carried clearly through the enormous space, "could someone show us where we might set up our temporary offices?" We will need access to the station's communication systems and maintenance areas to properly coordinate with our home world. This request only made the aliens more confused. Here they were, discussing military alliances and threats to galactic peace, and the humans were asking about office space and maintenance areas. What kind of military delegation worried about such things? Harold finished cleaning his invisible spot and began pushing his cart toward a side corridor. "Ma'am," he called to Rebecca, "should I start with the scheduled maintenance checks, or would you prefer I wait until after the formal presentations?" Rebecca nodded. "Please proceed, Harold. We want everything running smoothly." As the strange human delegation settled in for what promised to be very long negotiations, intelligence reports were already flowing through alien communication networks across the galaxy. Earth had sent maintenance workers, secretaries, and office staff to the most important military summit in recent history. It was either the greatest insult ever delivered to the Galactic Council, or proof that humanity was far weaker than anyone had imagined. None of the alien species considered a third possibility, that they had completely misunderstood what they were looking at. 3 days had passed since the humans arrived, and the negotiations were going nowhere. The alien delegates spent most of their time arguing among themselves about military strategies while the human support staff went about their daily routines. Harold could be seen every morning at 6, pushing his cleaning cart through the corridors and humming old songs under his breath. Emma sat in the small office they had given her, typing on her tablet and occasionally making calls back to Earth about supply deliveries. David spent hours reviewing boring paperwork, and Alice organized files with the dedication of someone who truly loved keeping things neat and tidy. General Krextar had grown increasingly frustrated with what he saw as Earth's lack of seriousness. On the morning of the 4th day, he decided to test human military readiness with what he called a training exercise. Of course, it was not really training at all, it was a carefully planned attack designed to show the Council how unprepared Earth was for real warfare. 20 Draconis soldiers, their scales darkened with special paint to help them hide in shadows, entered Nexus Station through the maintenance shafts. These were not ordinary troops but members of the elite Shadow Guard, soldiers trained since childhood to move unseen and strike without warning. Each one carried weapons that could cut through steel and armor that could stop most energy blasts. The attack began at exactly 2 in the afternoon, when most of the delegates were having their midday meal in the main conference room. The first sign of trouble was when the lights flickered and went out, plunging the entire station into emergency lighting that bathed everything in red. Alarm sounds began wailing through the corridors, and the automated voice system announced that there was a security breach in multiple sections. The alien delegates immediately reached for their personal weapons and activated their protective shields. The Vorthans formed a defensive circle around their commander, while the Draconis civilians moved to the back of the room, ready to let their military handle the situation. Everyone expected the humans to panic or hide behind the stronger alien species. Instead, something very strange happened. Harold appeared near the main entrance to the conference room, but he was no longer the slow, tired old man everyone had seen for the past 3 days. He moved across the floor like water, silent and smooth, reaching 2 Draconis soldiers who had just entered through a side door. The aliens watching could barely follow what happened next. One moment the soldiers were raising their weapons, and the next moment they were lying unconscious on the floor. Harold had not appeared to move quickly, but somehow he had covered the distance between them and struck with his bare hands in ways that made even the Vorthans look impressed. At the same time, Emma's voice came through the station's communication system, but she was not calling for help or screaming in fear. Instead, she spoke in calm, clear tones that carried easily over the alarm sounds. Maintenance Team Alpha, please begin standard cleaning procedures in sections 7 through 12. Kitchen staff, implement food service protocol Delta. All custodial personnel, please commence deep cleaning operations throughout the facility. To the alien delegates, these words made no sense. Why was she talking about cleaning and food service during an attack? But as they watched, humans began appearing from everywhere, from air vents, from behind cleaning carts, from doorways that had seemed empty just moments before. These were not the maintenance workers and office staff the aliens had been seeing for days. These people moved with purpose and skill that made the watching military officers pay very close attention. David had somehow produced what looked like an ordinary briefcase, but when he opened it, the contents were clearly not papers and pens. Complex electronic equipment unfolded like a flower blooming, and suddenly every communication device the attacking Draconis soldiers carried began making horrible screeching sounds before going completely silent. Their weapons stopped working, their armor lost power, and their night vision equipment showed nothing but bright white static. Alice, the quiet woman with thick glasses who had spent 3 days organizing files, was now doing something that made the ethereals pulse with what could only be described as professional admiration. She had produced what appeared to be office supplies from her small bag, but her hands moved over them like a musician playing an instrument. Small devices that looked like staplers and hole punchers were somehow being turned into things that made Draconis soldiers fall down and stay down. The most shocking thing was how normal they all still looked. Harold went back to pushing his cleaning cart after dealing with the soldiers, using it to block corridors and direct the flow of the remaining attackers exactly where he wanted them to go. Emma continued giving her strange instructions about cleaning and food service, but now the aliens could see that every word was actually a military command disguised as civilian work orders. Within 6 minutes of the attack beginning, it was over. 20 elite Draconis Shadow Guard soldiers, warriors who had successfully completed dozens of similar missions, were either unconscious on the floor or had retreated back through the maintenance shafts they had entered from. The humans had not fired a single shot from a traditional weapon, had not called for backup, and had not even appeared to break a sweat. As the emergency lights switched back to normal and the alarm sound stopped, Harold resumed his slow mopping of the corridor floor. Emma went back to typing on her tablet as if nothing had happened. David closed his briefcase, which once again looked like something any office worker might carry. Alice adjusted her thick glasses and continued organizing her files. The alien delegates sat in complete silence, staring at the humans who had just demonstrated capabilities that none of their intelligence reports had even hinted at. General Krekstar's red eyes were fixed on Harold, who was now humming the same old song he had been humming every morning while he worked. Commander Thex finally broke the silence. What exactly just happened here? Ambassador Rebecca Williams, who had remained calmly seated throughout the entire incident, smiled her diplomatic smile. I believe your people called it a training exercise, Commander. I hope it was educational. The emergency session began 30 minutes after the station's security systems were fully restored. Every alien delegate had demanded immediate answers, and the tension in the conference room was thick enough to cut with a knife. General Krekstar's scales had lost their usual dark green shine and now looked almost gray. Commander Thex kept flexing his large blue hands, a sign that Vorthans were deeply troubled. Even the peaceful Eldorians had abandoned their usual calm expressions and looked genuinely worried. Ambassador Rebecca Williams entered the room with the same confident walk she had shown on the first day. Behind her came her team, still looking exactly as ordinary as they had when they first arrived. Harold pushed his cleaning cart to a corner and began quietly organizing his supplies. Emma sat down with her tablet and started typing notes. David opened his worn briefcase and pulled out what appeared to be completely normal paperwork. Alice arranged her files in neat stacks and adjusted her thick glasses. The contrast between what they looked like and what everyone had just witnessed was so extreme that several alien species began to wonder if they were seeing things correctly. Rebecca took her seat at the human delegation table and folded her hands in front of her. I believe there are some questions about recent events. Perhaps we should clear up a few misunderstandings about human military doctrine. General Krekstar leaned forward, his red eyes burning with confusion and something that might have been fear. Your maintenance worker just defeated 2 of my most elite soldiers with his bare hands. These are warriors who have trained since childhood, who wear armor that can stop plasma bolts, who carry weapons that can cut through ship hulls. How is this possible? Rebecca turned slightly and looked at Harold, who was now wiping down his cleaning cart with the same careful attention he had given it every day since arriving. Harold, would you mind sharing a bit about your background with our new friends? The old man looked up from his work and pushed his gray hair back from his forehead. When he spoke, his voice was still quiet and polite, but something about it made every alien in the room pay very close attention. Well, ma'am, I spent 38 years in special operations. Started when I was 18 on the Mars colonies during the mining wars. Did tours on Europa, Titan, and about a dozen worlds most folks never heard of. My job was usually to get into places where regular soldiers could not go and deal with problems that regular soldiers could not handle. He went back to cleaning his cart as if he had just mentioned the weather. As for confirmed kills, well, I stopped counting at 400. Gets a bit depressing after that, you know? Makes a man want to find quieter work. The silence that followed was so complete that the soft humming of the station's air recycling systems sounded loud. Commander Thex made a sound like grinding stone, which was how Vorthans expressed shock. 400 confirmed kills? But you look like a janitor, Harold finished with a small smile. That's the idea, sir. People see an old man with a mop, they think they know exactly what he can and cannot do. Makes the job much easier. Rebecca gestured toward Emma, who looked up from her tablet with the same friendly expression she had worn for the past 3 days. Emma coordinated urban warfare operations during the colony uprising on Mars. Her specialty is turning civilian infrastructure into tactical advantages. She can look at any building, any street, any ordinary place where people live and work and turn it into a fortress. Emma nodded and went back to her typing. It's really just about understanding how systems connect to each other. Plumbing, electrical, communications, transportation. Everything in a modern facility is linked. If you know how to use those connections, you can control the entire environment. She spoke as if she were explaining how to organize a filing system. Rebecca continued around the table. David specializes in electronic warfare and demolitions. He can turn any civilian device into a weapon or a communication system, depending on what the situation requires. His briefcase contains equipment that can hack into most known computer systems or create explosives from common household materials. David looked up from his paperwork and nodded politely. It's amazing what you can do with the right knowledge and a few basic supplies. Most people carry everything you need to build a bomb or jam enemy communications without even knowing it. Finally, Rebecca indicated Alice, who was still organizing her files with the same careful attention she had shown every day. Alice is our demolitions and structural engineer. She can look at any building and determine exactly where to place charges to bring it down safely, or where to reinforce it to make it nearly impossible to destroy. She spent the past 3 days mapping every structural weakness and strength point in this entire station. Alice looked up and smiled shyly. I like to be thorough. It's important to understand your environment, whether you're trying to protect it or, well, modify it. The alien delegates exchanged glances that ranged from amazement to terror. The ethereals pulsed with colors that indicated deep respect mixed with concern. The Chitauri made rapid clicking sounds that served as their way of expressing surprise. General Krextar finally found his voice again. But they look so normal. So harmless. How do we know who is a soldier and who is truly civilian among your species? Rebecca's diplomatic smile became slightly warmer, though still perfectly polite. That's the point, General. You don't know. You can't know. Every human you meet might be someone like Harold, who spent 4 decades learning to kill efficiently and quietly. Or they might be someone like Emma, who can turn your own city against you. Or they might genuinely be just a janitor who cleans floors and empties trash cans. She gestured to her team, who continued their ordinary activities as if the most important military discussion in galactic history was not happening around them. Most species train obvious warriors for obvious wars. They build soldiers who look like soldiers, who act like soldiers, who announce their presence with impressive armor and powerful weapons. Humans learned a different approach. We learned to make anyone into a potential soldier while keeping them completely invisible until the moment we need them. Commander Thex's blue skin had darkened to almost purple, which indicated deep thought among his people. How many of your people have this kind of training? Rebecca's smile remained constant, but her eyes became slightly harder. Every human receives basic combat and survival training as part of standard education. Beyond that, she shrugged. I'm not sure that's information we're ready to share just yet. The implications hit the alien delegates like a physical blow. If what she was saying was true, then every human they had ever encountered, every maintenance worker who serviced their ships, every clerk who processed their paperwork, every technician who repaired their equipment, could potentially be a highly trained killer waiting for orders. The galaxy had been looking for human warriors and had found janitors instead. Now they were beginning to understand that they had been looking at the problem completely backwards. General Krextar had heard enough. The humiliation of his elite soldiers being defeated by what looked like cleaning staff burned in his chest like molten metal. That evening he sent an encrypted message back to the Draconis home fleet. Prepare for full military demonstration. These humans think they can mock us with parlor tricks and hidden games. Time to show them what real warriors can do. The response came back within hours. 3 full battalions of Draconis shock troopers, nearly 600 of their finest soldiers, were already en route to Nexus Station. These were not the stealth specialists who had been embarrassed earlier. These were heavy assault troops, the kind of warriors who wore armor thick enough to stop starship cannons and carried weapons that could melt through steel doors. At 0300 station time, when most beings were asleep, the attack began in earnest. Massive Draconis battle cruisers appeared around Nexus Station, their hulls bristling with weapons. Drop ships launched from their hangar bays like angry hornets, each one carrying 20 fully armed soldiers ready for total warfare. The first wave hit the station's outer docking bays with enough force to shake the entire structure. Blast doors that were designed to withstand meteor strikes buckled under the assault. Emergency alarms screamed through every corridor, and the station's defensive systems activated automatically, sealing off sections and preparing for siege conditions. In the diplomatic quarters, the alien delegates activated their personal protection systems and huddled in their reinforced rooms. This was exactly the kind of overwhelming military assault that their own species would use to capture an enemy position. There would be no subtlety, no hiding, no clever tricks. Just raw power applied until resistance crumbled. But the humans were nowhere to be seen. The first Draconis soldiers to enter the main corridors found them empty except for the usual civilian infrastructure. Lights, air recycling units, cleaning stations, food service areas. Everything looked exactly as it should on a diplomatic station. The soldiers advanced carefully, expecting ambushes from behind every corner, but they found nothing. Then Harold appeared. He emerged from what looked like a maintenance closet in Corridor 7, still wearing his work coveralls and pushing his familiar cleaning cart. To the Draconis soldiers, he looked like exactly what he had always appeared to be, an old human maintenance worker who was probably confused and frightened by all the noise and excitement. The squad leader gestured for Harold to get out of the way, not wanting to waste ammunition on a harmless civilian. That was his first and last mistake. Harold's cleaning cart, which the soldiers had dismissed as completely unimportant, suddenly became the most dangerous thing in the corridor. The old man moved it with surprising speed and precision, ramming it into the lead soldier's legs and sending him crashing into his teammates. But that was just the beginning. The cart itself had been modified during Harold's 3 days of routine maintenance. The cleaning fluid inside was now industrial solvent that ate through Draconis armor like acid through paper. The mop handle extended into a weapon that found weak points in battlesuits with surgical precision. Even the wheels had been weaponized somehow, becoming spinning blades that cut through anything they touched. Within 30 seconds, an entire squad of elite shock troopers was either unconscious or retreating, defeated by a janitor and his cleaning supplies. But Harold was not working alone. Emma's voice echoed through the station's communication system, and her words were no longer disguised as civilian work orders. Kitchen staff, implement Combat Protocol 9. All custodial teams begin advanced cleaning procedures. Maintenance divisions, commence emergency repairs in all combat zones. To anyone listening, it sounded like she was organizing ordinary station workers to deal with a crisis. The reality was far more terrifying. Humans began emerging from everywhere, from air vents, from behind walls, from rooms that the Draconis intelligence had marked as simple storage areas. These were not the maintenance workers and office staff that the aliens had been seeing for days. These people moved with deadly purpose and carried weapons that had been disguised as everyday tools. The station's kitchen staff turned out to be experts in chemical warfare, using cooking ingredients to create toxic gases that seeped through the ventilation systems into areas where Draconis soldiers were advancing. The cleaning crews had somehow turned ordinary janitorial equipment into sophisticated booby traps that disabled enemy armor and weapons. Even the office workers proved to be demolitions experts who had spent their time mapping structural weak points and planting charges that could seal off entire sections of the station. David had established himself in the station's central hub, and his routine paperwork had actually been him taking control of every electronic system in the facility. Draconis communications went silent. Their weapons lost power. Their armor's targeting systems showed nothing but static. Blast doors opened and closed according to his commands, hurting enemy soldiers exactly where the defending humans wanted them to go. Alice's 3 days of quiet file organization had been spent creating what could only be described as an architectural nightmare for any attacking force. Corridors that should have led to important targets instead led to dead ends. Rooms that appeared safe were actually traps filled with stunning gas or collapsing floors. The station itself had been turned into a weapon that fought against the invaders. The most frightening thing was how ordinary it all looked. Harold continued pushing his cart through the corridors, cleaning up the messes left by defeated soldiers. Emma sat at her workstation coordinating defensive operations as calmly as she might organize a dinner party. David typed on his computer with the same bored expression he had worn while reviewing paperwork. Alice moved through the station adjusting her carefully organized systems with the dedication of someone who truly loved keeping things neat and efficient. By dawn, 600 of the Draconis Empire's finest shock troopers had been systematically defeated by what their intelligence reports still insisted was a small diplomatic mission with custodial support. The humans had not fired a single traditional weapon. They had not called for backup from Earth. They had not even changed out of their ordinary work clothes. As the surviving Draconis forces retreated to their ships, General Krextar stared at the security footage of Harold quietly mopping the floor where 20 of his soldiers had fallen. The old man was humming the same tune he had hummed every morning since arriving at the station. The general's hands shook as he realized that everything his people thought they knew about warfare had just become completely useless. The aftermath of the battle created ripples that spread across the entire galaxy within hours. Emergency council sessions convened on dozens of worlds as military leaders tried to understand what they had witnessed. The security footage from Nexus Station was analyzed frame by frame, but the more alien strategists studied it, the less sense it made according to everything they thought they knew about warfare. On the Vorthan homeworld, Commander Thex stood before a room full of his species' greatest military minds. The holographic display showed Harold pushing his cleaning cart through a corridor filled with unconscious Draconis soldiers. This human eliminated an entire squad in 37 seconds using janitorial equipment, Thex announced to the silent room. Our combat simulations cannot explain how this is possible. The Vorthan High General, a being whose blue skin had turned almost white with age and whose golden armor bore the marks of 100 battles, leaned forward in his chair. Show me the kitchen staff footage again. The hologram shifted to show humans in cook uniforms creating chemical weapons from ordinary food ingredients. They moved with calm efficiency as if preparing dinner rather than engaging in warfare. These individuals have no obvious military training markers, the High General observed. Yet they demonstrate expertise that matches our elite chemical warfare specialists. Similar conversations were happening across known space. The ethereals, beings of pure energy who had observed conflicts for thousands of years, pulsed with colors that indicated complete confusion. Their collective consciousness struggled to process how a species could hide such capabilities so completely. The insect-like Chitauri, whose hive minds usually made military planning incredibly efficient, found their usual tactical algorithms failing when applied to human behavior. But the most dramatic changes were happening within the Draconis Empire itself. General Krextar had been stripped of his rank and was now undergoing intensive questioning about how 600 of their finest soldiers had been defeated by what appeared to be maintenance workers. The Empire's intelligence networks, which had spent months gathering data on human capabilities, were being completely restructured. Every report we have says the same thing, the new Draconis military commander told his staff officers. Humans appear weak. They send civilian support personnel to military meetings. Their soldiers do not wear impressive armor or carry obvious weapons. By every measure our species understands, they should be easy to defeat. He gestured toward the footage of Emma calmly coordinating the defense while typing on her tablet. Yet here we are. The intelligence officer responsible for the human files was a younger Draconis whose scales still held the bright green of youth. Sir, perhaps we have been asking the wrong questions. Instead of trying to identify human military personnel, maybe we should assume that all humans are potentially military personnel. The commander's red eyes fixed on his subordinate. Explain. Every human we have encountered could be like this Herald individual. The technician who services our communication equipment, the clerk who processes our trade agreements, the maintenance worker who repairs our environmental systems, any of them might be warriors hiding in plain sight. The implications of this realization hit the room like a physical force. If humans could make anyone into a soldier while keeping them completely invisible until needed, then traditional intelligence gathering became meaningless. How do you prepare for war against an enemy where every civilian encounter might be a military reconnaissance mission? Back at Nexus Station, the Galactic Council had reformed for what everyone knew would be a historic session. The alien delegates entered the main conference hall with expressions ranging from nervous respect to outright fear. They watched Harold's every movement as he went about his usual morning routine of cleaning and organizing. They paid careful attention to Emma as she typed on her tablet and made quiet phone calls back to Earth. Even Alice's file organization seemed potentially threatening now that they understood what those files might contain. Ambassador Rebecca Williams entered the hall with the same confident stride she had shown from the beginning. Her diplomatic smile was as polite and professional as ever, but now every alien in the room understood that this pleasant human woman had just orchestrated one of the most devastating military defeats in recent galactic history using nothing but maintenance workers and office staff. She took her seat at the human delegation table and looked around at the assembled representatives of dozens of species. I believe we were discussing military cooperation against threats in the Outer Rim territories. Are there any remaining questions about Earth's capabilities in this area? The silence stretched for long minutes. Finally, Commander Thex spoke, his voice much quieter than it had been during their first meeting. Ambassador Williams, how do we fight alongside allies when we cannot identify who among you are the actual soldiers? Rebecca's smile remained warm and diplomatic. Commander, I think you are still approaching this from the wrong direction. You keep trying to separate our military personnel from our civilian population. But that separation does not exist in the way you understand it. Every human learns basic combat and survival skills as part of growing up. Beyond that, we train people to use whatever skills they already have in military situations. She gestured toward her team, who continued their ordinary activities as if the most important strategic discussion in galactic history was not happening around them. Harold was a soldier who became a janitor. But his janitorial work made him better at infiltration and stealth operations. Emma was a logistics coordinator who learned urban warfare. But her civilian job experience made her better at managing complex military operations using existing infrastructure. The alien delegates began to understand that they had been thinking about the problem completely backward. Other species created soldiers and then gave them civilian jobs as cover. Humans took civilians and taught them to be soldiers while letting them keep doing civilian work. The galaxy seems surprised by our approach, Rebecca continued. Most species build armies of obvious warriors for obvious wars. Humans learned long ago that the most effective military force is one that nobody recognizes until it is too late to matter. As the session concluded and the delegates began to file out, each alien representative was already planning urgent communications with their home governments. Military doctrine across the galaxy would need to be completely reconsidered. Intelligence gathering methods would have to be redesigned from the ground up. The fundamental assumptions about how warfare worked had just been proven wrong by a janitor with a mop and bucket. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The deadliest human soldiers do not look like soldiers at all. They look like everyone else, and that was exactly the point.